Hello, this is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Amy Appleton. Amy is the Executive Director of Share Sonoma County. Share Sonoma County was developed organically with a group of interested colleagues meeting informally and wishing to offer housing for those finding it nearly impossible to find housing throughout Sonoma County. Her concept of creating housing by utilizing empty bedrooms available through home sharing was embraced and approved as a new program to initiate. She introduces an additional concept, exchanging household help for shared housing. She's a board member of the National Shared Housing Resource Center. So welcome, Amy Appleton.
Thank you very, very much, Nan. I appreciate it.
Amy, tell us how some of the crises, such as fire and the pandemic, have affected the need for shared housing in your area.
We started Share Fire, which was emergency housing for those who were impacted in 2017 from when we first started to get these new natural disasters coming through our county. So Sonoma County is actually an hour north of San Francisco and east about a half hour from the ocean. So we started Share Fire. We were very successful, placing over 300 people in a relatively short amount of time. And most of those were other people who were not impacted by the fires were willing to open up their homes temporarily. It was mayhem. I mean, we had at some point about 80 volunteers that were helping to do this because it was just such a need. And often, most of the folks found that their house was still intact. They could go back within a week or whatever, but we still have some that remain intact from 2017 fires. And this year, again, we had additional wildfires, and now we're having power outages. So all of that impacts mostly the folks we work with are those who have the housing, whether it's an empty bedroom or they have an accessory dwelling unit or something over their garage or a cottage on their property, or the ability that we can move in a mobile home on their property if they're out rural. The need is there that the housing is required for these folks simply because they don't have housing, and most of the folks we work with are extremely low income, meaning they may have $800 a month if they're fortunate. So the folks who have the housing tend to be in their 70s all the way up. We actually have a lady who just turned 100. Our folks looking for housing are oftentimes just too young to start collecting Social Security, can't find a job, or they've been, because of the pandemic, they've lost their jobs. I'm really excited to be part of Bill Barberg's summit because there's a huge concern and focus on the pandemic-related homelessness that we're starting to see in Sonoma County and beyond.
So how did you get involved in this in the very beginning?
I actually started in 2010. I was hired at a local shelter, emergency shelter for homeless. And back in 2010, that time frame, the economy was upside down. A lot of homeowners were losing their housing through foreclosure, bankruptcy. And so the executive director at this local nonprofit, which is Committee on the Shelterless, COTS, he hired me actually to create a home share program. And I didn't know anything about it, though I had been volunteering at this nonprofit for probably 3 years. I had started a compassionate listening program. I had done a lot of things. And so he decided to bring me in to create this home share program. And I immediately connected with Laura Fanucci, who still is at HIP Housing south of San Francisco. They have a home share program since the 70s. And so she took me under her wing. I do consider her the reason I am successful. She was just so generous with her time and knowledge. So I started in 2010. It went for a couple of years. the funding was lost. I went on to other things. And then, as you said, organically, some folks around the county began getting together informally, scratching their head, trying to come up with thinking outside the box, if you will, as far as housing solutions. Someone started contacting me, remembering that I had had this home share program. And after a couple of months, I was like, well, let me come. So by July of 2014, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to start a new program. A friend of mine who works down in Southern California at a university down there, she was like, well, you got to call it Share. And so I did. And the rest is history, frankly. So I from one person, I now have a staff of 6. We are absolutely a cog in the wheel as far as creating housing. People talk about affordable housing. My idea of affordable housing is the same as Bill Barberg at the Virtual Summit, which is, really genuinely, you're helping people who are extremely low income, if they have any income at all. And so we're looking at people that may not even be able to pay rent for a room. So in exchange for providing services, which is what I call it, a service exchange, in lieu of paying rent, we help them define the types of services that the person who has that extra bedroom or housing configuration, whatever that person might need in order to remain home safely and age in place and thrive. And we have lots and lots of data as it relates to just documenting how a person's life improves because they brought somebody into their home. They now have companionship. They're not isolating. They're no longer housebound because they've got somebody that can drive them places. And with the pandemic, we've seen surprisingly, but not really, an increase of people with extra bedrooms or housing configurations that have been impacted emotionally by the pandemic. Physically, some of our folks have had to evacuate 2-3 times already this year and don't have the ability to drive. So sensing their own personal vulnerabilities, or perhaps their family or friends see that for them, we've gotten many calls from people just saying, look, I have an extra bedroom. I need, and I'd like to help somebody who needs housing. So we're real busy. Because of COVID, because of the pandemic, we have very careful, stringent guidelines and procedure in place as it relates to the COVID testing. So if someone is going to go into a match interview, we've already had them talking on the phone, which we facilitate all of this. And before they actually meet, and if there's family and friends involved, we encourage that they participate. All parties have had a COVID-19 test. We have a health agency locally that does it for free. You can get tested the same day and your results certainly within 4 calendar days. So we're really fortunate to have this resource available for us. But that has added a lot of extra steps for our housing specialist. We used to be able to match within 24 hours. Now it's a good 3-week period before we can do a turnover and say thumbs up, yes, let's move forward. With the service exchange, or what you're describing as, providing services, what is your way of referring to it, Nan?
Well, exchanging your household help for home sharing.
Yeah. So when we do that type of household structure, we have 4 different types of structures for our program. But with that one, we do it on a trial basis, up to 30 days. So that gives them the time to make sure it's the right match. And we are facilitating supportive services throughout the entire lifetime of the match. Our matches average about 1.5 years or longer. So during that trial period, we're checking in weekly to make sure if there are any issues at all. I mean, anything that just creates some sense of uncomfort in the stomach, just even before a problem becomes or manifests, we want to be involved to address things immediately. And that's that's our basically our mantra through the entire lifespan of a match, which is the honeymoon's going to end. You know, it could be 14 days, it could be 6 months, but there's going to be a moment where this person is not pleased that you're taking her cereal. I mean, sometimes it's the most mundane, but it just builds up because they didn't communicate properly. So we have all kinds of conflict resolution procedures, practices, and our specialists do remain part of the match for as long as it's intact.
When you talk about exchanging household help, give me some examples of what you mean by that.
So the way we match people, by the way, 99% of the way we match people is based on our intuition. The characteristics of the match is, very simple things, whether you'll accept a pet or, we have level 1 through 5 as far as if you're providing services or receiving services in exchange for 0 rent or possibly less rent. We have levels of your needs. So for a provider, this is the person who's providing that housing. He or she is level 1 through 5. So level 1 is just be there at nighttime, very simple services that are required. It goes all the way up to 5, which can be very extensive. And it might be that 2 people live within the household. And in order for this provider to remain home, very specific requirements are defined for that person. But we typically levels 1 through 3. 3 would be driving, house cleaning, maybe some things that, they get a little more complex the higher the level. And so we match these people based on their skill set or of the levels. So if you have a certified nursing assistant, he or she could potentially go up to a level 4. A level 5 is somebody who might have, be a nurse, physical therapist. We do get a lot of health folks who are in the health industry. A lot of the times we couple our services with the county in-home support services. So that is a Medi-Cal program because a lot of our folks are on Medi-Cal. So they're earning $1,500 a month or less. So, it's pretty low income households. And so we couple what we do, we define our services, and then they're separate from the services they would receive from whether it's private pay, caregiving agency, which is a minority for us, but we do definitely have some agencies involved. And then also with any Medi-Cal based program. And when you have those outside agencies, we are all about, the reason for our success is basically because we collaborate with anyone and everyone involved within the match. So we're collaborating with social workers, so we have quite the team within some of these home shares.
So what's your advice if people are thinking about this? Should they call you and then you do the match because somebody says, I'm looking for a place, the other person says, I have a room, and you're looking at all your resources and then matching them? Is that how it works?
So more than 50% of our referrals now come from our website. And so I would recommend that folks go to our website, which is www.sharessonomacounty.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. My nonprofit actually is Share California, and we do business at this time only in Sonoma County. And frankly, it's more than we can handle. But our referrals are oftentimes through the various aging agencies within Sonoma County, nonprofits, shelter system. Nearly 30% of our seekers, those who are seeking housing or looking for affordable housing, are designated homeless. And that with the pandemic is our huge concern, is that more and more people, as the eviction moratorium is lifted, we're going to see a huge amount of folks who now they'll be given notices. They've still not regrouped as far as finding jobs or whatever because they've been laid off. So there's a huge epidemic that potentially is right around the corner. So we're we're very concerned about that.
I would think you would be, because they still have to pay back rent, don't they?
Yeah. Yes.
And so this
I
big
mean, it's a
balloon,
nightmare.
yeah, balloon payment can come due at that point.
Yeah. And when that moratorium is lifted, they will be given 30, 60 days, but they potentially already have received that. So then they receive a 3-day pay or quit. We do have rental assistance there because of the CARE Act. There's quite a bit of money just here in Sonoma County and elsewhere around the country, but that money has to be spent by December 30, and it's only putting a finger in the dike. It is not an answer. So we do have an answer, which is to create immediate affordable housing. Shared housing and home sharing is real, it's a viable solution.
So you feel that this will definitely affect affordable housing in the future, the supply side of it.
And people look at affordable housing differently. You can have subsidized housing through federal government. You can have, we work a lot with folks. We place people with HUD vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
You can rent a room with a HUD voucher. So every chance we can, we utilize a HUD voucher. So we're just looking at down the road. There's just going to be a slew of people that cannot even afford to rent a room.
And many housing authorities, of course, have a very long waiting list. So it's not something that.
But in Sonoma County, we don't even have. So in Sonoma County, we don't even have waiting list anymore. They do every year and a half. They do a raffle. So that, yeah, it's a mess. But one of the things that's happening, in the good old days, there's a lady on my board. Her name is Rachel Guinness, and she's changed the legislation on the state level for California with reference to accessory dwelling units. Because when you went to in the good old days, if you wanted to build an ADU on your property, the filing fees were horrendous. So because of her legislation, she's now gotten it down to city by city that you have to go to, but at around $3,000 to start the filing fees. And but now what's happening with builders and creating affordable housing is building new homes that are split, because that's the legislation, splitting them into 3 ADUs and charging market rate. So that's not a solution for us. That's not affordable housing, even though that's how it's promoted.
Well, that's really interesting. And you've just given us so much information. It's an area where I don't think a lot of people have much information or much knowledge. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
And I would recommend, if somebody would like to contact me, they can call our main phone number, which is 707-766-8800, or go to our website.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you very much for your time, Nan. Appreciate it.